Welcome to Figure Eight, where we feature inspiring stories of women entrepreneurs who have grown their businesses to 7 and 8 figures revenue. If you're in the mix of growing a bigger business, these stories are for you. Join us as we explore where the tough spots are, how to overcome them, and how to prepare yourself for the next portion of the climb. I'm your host, Julie Ellis. I'm an author, entrepreneur, and a growth and leadership coach who co-founded, grew, and exited an 8-figure business. This led me to exploring why some women achieve great things. And that led to my book, Big Gorgeous Goals. Let's explore the systems, processes, and people that help us grow our businesses to new heights. If you're interested in growing your business, this podcast will help. Now, let's get going. Hello and welcome to this episode of Figure Eight. Today I am in conversation with Victoria Sopik. Victoria is the founder and CEO, mother of 8 children, grandmother of many children, and Kids and Company is her business. So she has over 150 daycares across North America. She has disrupted corporate childcare in the founding and growing of her business, and she's a recognized expert in her field with over 3 decades of experience and a reputation as an innovator. I'm excited to chat with her today. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for coming and chatting. I'm so interested because, of course, we started our businesses around the same time and met each other a long time ago now and have seen so many growth opportunities and growth things and changes in the marketplace. And I'm so curious for you about whether you imagined you'd be here today with over 150 centers across North America.
Oh, it's such a great question. And it's something that I actually reflect on a lot, mostly because of where I live. So I live at the bottom of Markham Road. And when I was actually in childcare, my son's turning 40 this year. And so when I was pregnant and expecting him 40 years ago, I was also, a young mom, wanting to be a working mom and trying to figure out how to do that. So I mostly wanted to have 10 babies. He was obviously number one. I did stop at 8 because I did realize that they're a lot of work. But at the time and I also say to people often that, having babies is a young person's job kind of thing. And that it's harder as you're older just because you're tireder, really. So, I wanted to be young, I had 8 children in 11 years. So in my early 30s, I was done. But I was driving down Markham Road and there really was not a lot of childcare at all, especially for babies. And had never been to one. I didn't have any experience with them at all. I had been in the summer camp business and I'd had summer camp, and the camp was something that was in already built, like school gymnasiums or churches or parks. It wasn't purpose built. And I remember seeing a purpose built childcare that was, like from the ground up designed to care for children with infant classrooms and toddler classrooms, preschool classrooms, a kitchen, proper gross motor rooms, proper playgrounds. And I remember being just fascinated and mesmerized by the idea of a purpose-built childcare, even before I was in childcare, just because I'd never heard it or seen it. And so the fact now that, I've done that hundreds and hundreds, well, not hundreds, we have, I probably have built more than 200 because we've closed down a number in the years, in the 40 years I guess I've been doing it. But I just remember thinking people would think about cell phones back in the day, like what is a cell phone, how does it work? For me it was childcare. So at the time I never thought that I could be in that kind of business that would be like developing, building, creating. I more thought I would be in service delivery. And so I knew I was delivering a service with camp, and I thought I could maybe do it with childcare, but it was this whole sort of purpose-built creation that was, again, really interesting to me. So what did I think was going to happen? I thought I would, have 1 or 2 or 3 childcares and run them, and it would be a great thing to do. And meanwhile, it seemed like there was a huge need for childcare, and, more and more across Canada, across the US. And so it just shows you that it's hard to know how your story will unfold.
It's true. And I think, I think you always had big thoughts. So, at first 3 seemed like big ideas, right? Like you needed
Hmm.
1 to have your own kids
Right.
go to, and then from
That's
there
it.
you think, "Oh, well, the north part of Toronto, there's a lot of families with kids having babies, moms who wanna work." Like, it seems like it makes sense to think you could have a handful of them within
Right.
within a confined space.
100%.
Yeah, but at what point did you have the idea that you could help corporations with the daycare for the parents who worked for them?
So it's a great question. So yeah, so for many years, like almost 20 years, from sort of being 20 to almost 40, I was offering childcare for families. Again, not in purpose-built buildings, but mostly in places like churches or schools. So I learned how to operate a business. I learned how to operate childcare. And then I started to read in, I would say, like the 1999, 2000 era, so still 25 years ago. I started to read about US. The US is very different from Canada, right? Because they don't typically have a mat leave. Back then it was kind of 2 weeks. And, but companies wanted, at this time, 25 years ago, companies were really thinking about women in the workforce. Prior to that, lots of moms had stayed home, but the economy was changing. Diversity was a big key issue. Having women successful in their careers, they needed childcare. Families started to look at sort of both moms and dads being, co-parenting and being interested in childcare, both. So companies in the US were looking at how can we have childcare for our families, and they were building childcares on campuses. So they'd have these big campuses with hundreds, thousands of employees, and they would put a childcare run by a US company, that was doing it well in the US. And so I started reading about and looking at and thinking, well, this could be a Canadian solution. We could do something like this in Canada.
And so really what you're saying is from the time you founded the business, you had this idea that that could be a way that you served corporations.
Yeah. I honestly, like, I didn't know that companies would ever care or think about it. Like from the time I founded Kids and Company, yeah, it was founded on the basis of corporate childcare. And I went into companies to say, like, would you be interested in corporate childcare? And they said to me, we don't tell our employees where to go to the dentist, where to go to the doctor. We wouldn't tell them where to go for childcare. And I said, yes, but they can get into the dentist, they can get into the doctor. And right now, there isn't a lot of childcare available. So if you partnered with us, we would build childcares and they would be available to you. And that was sort of the compelling message. And that made them go, okay, yes, we will consider doing that. And our very first location opened up at Commerce Court downtown. Then we had one at the Concilium in Scarborough. And, sort of off we went. Another one in the TD Center downtown. And we were mostly servicing like law firms, accounting firms, other businesses downtown that was very important to them that their employees could have childcare right there and they would be close by. And that's when we met, I think, right around then, because you guys were launching or had launched, and we were trying to think what else could we do for our families that were coming to childcare. And of course, labels was a great thing. Labels for childcare, perfect. And so we would include them with the registration fee, and it was a
Yeah.
great thing.
Well, I think one of the things that Kids and Company and you have done really well is this idea of what are all the services you can bring around that help support the families that are bringing their kids into your centers.
Yes, 100%. And you know what? As we discovered, and in Canada, I think that there are a lot of people obviously with young children, but there are a lot of people that have aging parents. And one of the things we offer is elder care, which is like in-home personal support workers or nurses coming into the home, and that has been for our corporate clients something that's been very well received because again, they have employees that need both of those
Right.
things.
Yeah, they've got, so many people now are in that sandwich, right? Carrying it on
100%.
both sides. And so I'd love to ask you a little bit more about the elder care piece and how that came into, when did you decide to start adding offerings on that sort of side?
We did interesting right from the beginning, and the reason we did is because as we went in to talk to our corporate clients, especially at the start, they were kind of reluctant to give a benefit that cost money that was only going to serve like a small part of their population. So only a certain number of people having kids, and then some of the people that were having kids didn't need childcare or want childcare, or their kids were older. But everybody has some elderly person in their life that they care about, whether it's their great aunt or their husband's mother or whomever. There's no one that didn't need support. And so it became something that was more universal, and then it was a bigger selling point, to be honest with you.
Interesting. That is interesting. And I would think something that is very rarely offered through
Yeah,
corporations.
you know what? I mean, it's rarely offered as a benefit. Lots of companies, as you know, right now I think we partner with Bayshore Health, but we just so what we would do is partner with a health company, care company that delivered, that had great high quality customer service, and also personal support workers or nurses that could go in, and then the companies that were paying us to offer the guaranteed childcare, emergency or backup childcare, could also offer the elder care. So that was the great thing.
Yeah, and I do think that that emergency backup childcare is so, as a corporation, it's so important because, suddenly you can have, I mean, we saw it in the pandemic, right? All the parents that were suddenly educating,
Hmm.
very young children from home, or their kids
Mm,
couldn't go to daycare. And, no matter how
right.
hard you try, working is pretty difficult in those
For
circumstances.
sure. For sure.
So having that emergency availability is so critical.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you decide that you wanted to enter the US market?
You know what? It's kind of an interesting story. I at the beginning when we started, I was traveling all the time. Jennifer, my co-founder and business partner, as our CFO, and she had smaller, younger children. She did stay in the office, did not travel so much, but I was traveling a lot, looking at new locations, meeting with corporate clients, looking at the quality of the childcare centers, and so we were, heavily in Ontario, obviously in Alberta, BC, and then Nova Scotia, but we were looking for new locations. And I remember being in the airport in Kelowna. Kelowna was so beautiful, and looking for a location there, and then looking, it was going to be 6 hours for me to fly home, thinking 6 hours is such a long time, and realizing that Toronto was 1 hour flight from Boston, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Washington. Like there were 6 cities that were an hour away, and I was like, why wouldn't we go there? It's more of a competitive market, I would say, and that's been challenging for us. But Harvard Business School did a case study of us as one of the more successful Canadian companies entering the US market, which we're very proud of because a lot of times Canadian companies are afraid to enter the US market or they don't do well. So, it was a big challenge for us. And we started in Chicago. And we had about 10 locations in Chicago, maybe up to 13 at one time. And it was, an hour away. It was sort of very similar to operating in Canada, other than the fact that, all the advice that we received from our like PR people and our consultants was, don't tell anyone you're Canadian. The people in the US will not care, be interested in dealing with a Canadian company. You're incorporated in the US, you're in a US company. We were wholly owned by a Canadian company, but still be a US company. And so we tried, but and yeah, I would say, and now we have over 70 locations in the US. So we have grown quite quickly in the last 2 years. And it's been interesting, a lot of good learning, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, it is interesting because I think often we think that Americans are just like us, and there are some differences in business that you need to be aware of. I would imagine you're also getting much younger children, more infant
Yeah,
space.
you're 100% right. And so, like, the level of care and training is important. I mean, the tiny, tiny babies that are 2 and 3 weeks old, you're so worried about things like SIDS that are just other, tiny baby things. Typically in Canada, the children are close to 18 months, at least over a year. So it's much different right now.
Yep. What have been your biggest, like, amazing things that have happened to you out of this journey?
So many things. You know what? I'm really all about people, and I'm a extreme extrovert. Love to be around people, and I've just met so many interesting like entrepreneurs like yourself, and many others, as well as interesting clients that we've learned so much from. But I think that the biggest reward for me is we have such a great, strong, loyal leadership team at our head office, and we're approaching like so this year we're 23 years old. We had our 20th anniversary and approaching 25. We have so many people that have worked for us for more than 20 years. And you know what, in the sort of old days per se, as people would start at their job and finish 20, 30 years later. But as even in the last 20 years things have changed and there's so much more movement, and with younger people today, I think they'll have a number of different iterations or chapters of their career as they go through. So just the fact that we have such strong relationships with our team, and they're so loyal to all of us, and they've really helped us build this great Canadian business. It's been a huge win, I would
Yeah,
say.
I think that is a huge win because I think it's not the norm. So I think it's really great that people feel loyal. And I would think also because you've
100%.
been able to build a relatively big company, you've been able to give people paths for progression.
It's a good point. And you know what? That has been what I say the challenge. I think we've been pretty successful at it, but what happens with a lot of entrepreneurial organizations is that the people that are there at the beginning are not the right people to be there as you grow, right? And I'm sure over along the way we have lost some people that we wish things could have worked out, but they weren't necessarily the right fit. But no one, not too many. Like not no, we've managed, I think, to accommodate, and people have been understanding. And someone who might have been like our head of marketing in the early days now might be our VP marketing. We had to bring in a new head of marketing just because they weren't as sort of educated and trained on digital and different things, but they were cool with it. They were like, you know what, like this is not my space. I don't want to be responsible. I'm happy to stay in my role, and
Yeah, and
that's
there's
good.
some people that will be happy to do that and others that go for sure.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's a normal piece of the journey. And people who liked it when you had 5 locations or 3 locations might not like 100 locations, and that's yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%.
So what's next for you? What's next for Kids and Company?
You know what? It's interesting because as you may know, our government has this great Canadian. It's called CWEL, Canadian Wide Early Learning, and then basically it's providing funding for families to have sort of low cost childcare. For us, it's so important for us to maintain our brand and our high quality, and we're full because people love the fact that it's low cost, and so we're trying to do everything we can to maintain the high quality of customer care, customer service, the educational components, the enrichment. The challenge with this program is because it provides so much funding for families, it's hard to grow. Like they don't have endless dollars to government, so it's hard to open up new locations. So we're opening in the U.S. I mean, we have, as I say, tons and tons. We'd like to open more in Canada. I don't know what will happen, whether things will change with the government, like with the election. But it's been, as I say, interesting. From a intellectual perspective or learning perspective, it's so interesting to see all these iterations of how you can offer the same business under different so like at one point you know during COVID it was different because parents were working at home and then they weren't really going back to work, so they didn't necessarily need childcare, and then they go call back to work and we were doing more part-time childcare. And even during COVID we were fully open because some people are emergency workers, lots of people needed to go to work, and some people couldn't work with their babies. And so there's been so many iterations of how we've offered our business that things are never dull. Let's put it that way. If we have a dull minute, then the next thing there's another.
Entrepreneurs, listen up. Amplify Your Voice 2025, the financial edition, is where you need to be. Brought to you by Canadian Small Business Women, a place for entrepreneurs to find the resources to take their businesses to the next stage. You'll learn from incredible keynote speakers and leave feeling more confident about your financial future. From getting clarity on building your stock portfolio to real estate investment, this event will be the perfect place to get the tools to level up your finances. And the perks? They're good. Every guest gets a free professional headshot, a swag bag, and lunch. Most importantly, endless connections with like minded entrepreneurs. This event isn't just for women, it's for everyone. Get your tickets today. The link to buy is in the show notes. Certainly, at 70 locations in the US, you have lots of opportunity there.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah,
Yeah. We could
yeah,
have
for
hundreds.
sure.
Yeah, that's
What
100%.
has the sort of you've obviously built, purpose built, you've acquired as well. Like your growth path
Hmm.
has been both sort of your own organic growth as well as that sort of acquisition path.
Right.
How did you decide, to not only build your own daycares, but also to look at, acquiring some independence?
Yeah. You know what? The problem with building is just takes so long. Right. And so at one point we were like, we wanted to grow, and part of the cost, and people that are in the retail business would understand this, when you have an infrastructure, like in Calgary, if we had like a regional manager and two centers, there really wasn't anything for it to do. So we needed to either buy or build more centers. Takes years to build them, but if we buy them, we can buy them quickly. So it was more about sort of filling up the footprint in Canada. And the other thing was, when we were going to corporate clients and saying, we want to be your childcare provider, we want to give guaranteed childcare to your employees, we needed to have availability. We needed to have childcare centers. So then we had to buy them. And that integration piece, I mean, that's a huge, hour story, hours and hours of learning on its own. I mean, the one that we bought, in Burlington, I think that you're aware of, the woman who was lovely that owned it, she would have all of her, and she'd owned it for 30 years, she would have all of her employees on their birthday for lunch at her house. And so, because she lived close by, and people looked forward to that and they enjoyed that, all of her teachers. Well, I lived in East Scarborough. I wasn't, no one wanted to come to East Scarborough to have lunch at my house. Not really even a cook. So, how do we do that with all of our other centers? So then we're not offering that. We're changing things. It's hard for people. It's hard for people when they're used to something. They have expectations to see things change. And so that was a challenge for sure.
For sure. I think there's different, obviously different challenges, but I can see that, if you think about a market, like you go into Calgary, having one center in Calgary is more difficult to find any kind of efficiencies and, find the suppliers you need for food and all of the different parts that go along with, right? If you have 5 locations, it's going to be easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. 100%.
Yeah. Those economies of scale are important.
100%.
Yeah. What other ideas do you have, or what are you going to do? What are you going to do when you grow up, Victoria?
Yeah. So it's so great. You know what? I'm, still learning, still growing. I do thrive on chaos, I always say. And so for me, I have enough of a challenge. I'm not really involved I was involved in the US for quite a bit. And now they have, we've gotten so big, we have a whole leadership team in the US. So I don't have to worry about them, which is great. Because it was as they became sort of more, I was also having more grandchildren, and so now I have almost 17 grandchildren. The last number 17 to arrive soon, and then I think I'm going to have 6 or 7 more. Like it's going to be a lot, maybe even 9 or 10. So for me, they're all sort of like a positive work worry, that you just they're there and you think about them and need to be with them and see them. So that takes up a lot of my sort of time and energy. And it's nice to have a business that's mature, because you can really work on making it the best it could be. We're also doing growth. We're opening new locations. We have acquisitions. And so I'm curious about, many of my friends are sort of in their mid to late 60s and retiring. I don't feel at all that I want to retire. I think it's probably, 5 to 10 years away. But things change all the time, as you say. So it's just, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting now for you to have fresh eyes on what your own kids go through as they want their kids to go to daycare, and what that looks like, and what insights that might bring to you about,
100%. Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. A lot. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's true. Like, I see more and more people, they don't retire. It's not the big production of like, there's a date and that sort of thing. Some people certainly do, but there's also a lot of people who want to, plant themselves and give back and use that expertise.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And you're doing that with entrepreneurs yourself. And maybe that's what I'll do. Like, I certainly could be, a mentor and support other entrepreneurs. I have learned so much. I've been through every possible sort of situation, shall we say. So I think there's lots of opportunities for me to use my brain power.
Yeah. And I think it's been, interesting too, because a lot of women shy away from kind of capital intensive businesses, and you have very successfully navigated that. Building centers is not inexpensive. And it's all money, upfront money, whether you buy it or whether you build it, you're putting it all in before you can even open your door.
No, 100%. And you have to be able to operate successfully. Like, you have to prove you can. And that was a good thing that we learned to do.
Yeah. Well, and it's that tension between, the quality of the programming and running a profitable business. And
100%.
being kind of, I think, I think a lot of times as women, we get sort of apologetic about running profitable businesses.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think that people will respect and appreciate you running a profitable business as long as you're delivering, what they need, high quality. And for us, one of the biggest differences was we have a really high level of customer care. And we never charge late fees. We let parents be flexible with their childcare. And, I think the biggest message we've always had is, we're grateful that you're sending your children to our childcare. Whereas many of our competitors would say, oh, you're on the waiting list. We'll let you know when you have a spot. You'd be lucky you have a spot. And so people were like, oh, I'm so lucky to get a childcare spot at this location. Whereas our message we wanted it to be was, really that, like, we're so thrilled you've chosen us. We want your family to be part of our kids and community family. And so, one of the things that really such a great positive reflection of that is we started an alum program. So remember, we had babies now for 23 years, so we could conceivably have 23-year-old adults walking around that came to us when they were babies, and everything in between. We started an alum program where we started emailing people that had registered with us, up till probably 10 maybe years ago, say, do you want to be in our alum program? And we had like a huge number of people respond, yes, yes, yes. Parents, obviously, but still, it was really, really such a great, you know, feeling to know that people felt still
Yeah.
connected to
Well,
us.
and you'll be close to getting a big wave of the next generation. Really, in
Truth,
the next
truth,
that's the
truth. Yeah,
next
yeah,
decade will be another wave.
yeah.
It is interesting because I do feel like, in that daycare is commoditized environment, people also don't feel like they can really give you feedback and tell you what they think about it because they're
Mm-hmm.
so worried about being turfed out or losing
They're
that. And
afraid.
so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
seem to have created an environment also where you're going to be able to get feedback to be better.
yeah. And you know what? I tell this story often about many years ago, probably I don't know, 15 maybe. The CEO of American Express, Denise Pickens, I think was her name, sent me a letter to say, as an American Express card holder, to say, if I had any questions or concerns about Amex, my account, here was her cell phone number, here was her email, please reach out to her. And I was like, oh, this is so like reassuring and comforting. I love this, that I can do this. We should do this with our families. And so now, from that time on, all the families get an email from me and a phone call from our customer care team with my cell phone number to say, Victoria wanted you to know that here's her cell phone number. If there's any questions or concerns, please contact her. And it's been a great, I think, authentic message piece to everyone on our team, which is Victoria cares. We have, thousands and thousands, 15,000 children in childcare. Victoria cares about these children and she wants to know if there's something going on with them. And so we need to just make sure we handle the details. We need to make sure we know what's happening.
And so I would imagine that something like that is a lot of people have your cell number and not very many people use it. Is that true?
No, you know what? Like honestly, like it's literally like one or two a year that call me, and obviously or email me if they do. I always look at it as well. Is this, the 1 in 100 that has a legitimate concern? Usually not. Usually it's something very personal. I think, to be honest, unfortunately, people they lose it. Like they lose the email. They forget they had it. They don't remember. And then, they may be like unhappy for a moment or two. And then they're like, well, you know, they don't even realize that it came to them when they registered. But on the other hand, I think it's more of a culture message that is like we actually really do care, and therefore, and the directors and the area directors and the teachers know that, and so. If a parent is unhappy with something, so another child bit their child in the room or they didn't feel that they were getting the right attention, then they can go to their director and their director is not going to be like, oh, sorry, like, we don't care, like messaging that. The director will be hopefully very authentically caring because that's what we want to be.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, opening communication is always helpful. And I'm sure that it helps you with the position you have in the marketplace and the reputation you have.
100%.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, I'm so excited. And I'm so also was noticing as I researched for this, you and Jennifer are still together. You're still both there, which I also think is amazing because, that's a relationship that's not unlike a marriage
Yes.
after this long.
Yes. You know what? We're still friends, but she's just finished, just retired. So she is retiring, but we're still friends. Yeah, yeah. But she was with us for most of the duration. She is a little bit different from me in that loves to do stuff like, she had a lot of hobbies, and I luckily don't. So my hobbies are my kids, which I'm obsessed with, and my grandchildren, and then working. I'm a big working woman, and so I think that makes a difference. And she was, she worked very hard, obviously for 30 plus years, and then she really wants to have time now to do stuff she's passionate about. But we're still good friends, and we see each other all the time.
I love it. I love it. Well, what a journey you've had.
Thank
And
you.
thanks so much for chatting with me
Of
today.
course.
I can't wait to see Kids and Company continue to grow and
Yes. We'll
hopefully
have your
flourish.
grandbabies with us. Thank you.
Yes.
You'll call me.
Thank you.
Take
Take care.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you won't miss any episodes. Figure 8 isn't just a podcast. It's a way of seeing the big, gorgeous goals of women entrepreneurs coming to life. If you're interested in learning more, you can find my book, Big Gorgeous Goals, on Amazon anywhere you might live. For more about my growth and leadership training programs, visit www.julieellis.ca to see how we might work together. Read my blog or sign up to get your free diagnostic. Are you ready for growth? Once again, that's www.julieellis.ca. When we work together, we all win. See you again soon for another episode of Figure 8.